Now come to the statement. Minister of State Catherine McKinnell.
Thank you. With permission, Mr Speaker, I would like to make a statement on this government's plans to reform school accountability. But before doing so, I want to say that I am devastated to hear that a boy has died after a stabbing at a school in Sheffield. My heart goes out to his family, friends and the entire school community at this very distressing time. We're in contact with the school and the council to offer support, and investigations are underway. Nothing is more important than the safety of our children. This government is very clear on the need to secure the very best education for our young people. And we are determined that our schools are reformed to deliver that ambition, to enable every child to achieve and thrive. And that reform begins at the very start of a child's journey, with an early years system which sets our children up for the very best start in life. It means brilliant schools with excellent qualified staff, driving high and rising standards in all parts of our country. It reflects a determination to ensure that we break, in the generations ahead, that unfair link that runs between background and opportunity. Mr Speaker, like so many of us in this House, I know the value of a brilliant school because I went to one. In the West End of Newcastle, in the North East, a school that set high standards for all of its pupils, that nurtured my talents and love of learning and propelled me forward to a university and a career in law. So I know full well that the system can work, that a good school can be an incredible force for good. My school set high standards and expected us all to aim high. High standards, high expectations, that this government's vision for every child and every school in our country. We will set no ceiling on what children can achieve. But, Mr Speaker, we must recognise that the reforms that have come from all sides of this House have driven forward great education reform, like David Blunkett to Michael Gove. They've also been driven forward by a dedication and determination of teachers right across the country. I benefited from the first statutory national curriculum introduced by Lord Baker in 1988. Then the arrival of Ofsted and the Common Inspection Framework brought far greater rigour to school inspections. Numeracy Hour and Literacy Hour brought a clear focus on the impact and importance of high-quality teaching in and of itself. Performance tables brought new transparency for parents, and SATs showed children's attainment across key stages for the first time. The sponsored academy programme, started by Labour and expanded by the Conservatives, has been instrumental in raising standards in many, many schools. The diversity and innovation, the drive for improvement that multi-academy trusts brought to our schools, that focus on evidence and pragmatism embodied in the Education Endowment Foundation, the switch to phonics in the wake of the Rose Review, and the focus on curriculum rich in knowledge. All of these brought changes to our system, transforming the life chances of millions of children. We understand better than any previous generation what works to drive up standards for children. We know more clearly than ever before that a great education for every child is not an impossible promise, but it's one that governments can and must deliver. And we are determined, more fiercely than ever before, to use that understanding, that knowledge, to take our schools forward. Because in the last decade, the ambition of excellence that powered governments of left and right, that appetite for reform to deliver better life chances for our children, it faded and the system drifted. Members opposite might not like hearing this, so I think we have to remind the government's inheritance in July, and it tells a less happy story. A third of children finishing primary school without the reading, writing or math skills they need. Children with special educational needs struggling to get the right support after years in a system that just isn't serving them. The attainment gap between those from well-off backgrounds and those less privileged is shamefully wide. Young people in London are 70% more likely to enter university compared to their peers in the North East, where I went to school. Hundreds of thousands of children in schools that are stuck, receiving poor Ofsted judgments year on year. Mr. Speaker, this government is impatient for our children's success. They only get one childhood, so we will not rest from ensuring they get the best education they can. We will not tolerate our children being let down. We will not sit back and await changes in schools from governance changes alone. This government, this Labour government, will stop at nothing to improve their schools and their life chances. We can and must build on the legacy of reform, reignite the ambition for excellence and drive the change our children need, to push once more for high and rising standards in every school, to break down the barriers to opportunity for every child. And a key part of that change must be a reformed and improved approach to both inspection and accountability. One that champions good practice, encourages collaboration in schools, and crucially shines a light on all areas of strengths and weaknesses. Madam Deputy Speaker, today the Department for Education and Ofsted are together setting out our plans for a new era of accountability, a renewed ambition for every child and every school. Schools that are stuck but have the capacity to improve must be supported and pushed to do so. We will get our new RISE teams, expert school leaders, in early. We will use them to facilitate faster improvement using knowledge, experience and the reports of reformed, high-quality inspections to turn schools around. We will work to chart a path to progress, to intervene in a way that is effective, bespoke and proportionate, making a difference as early as possible. Today, we're announcing over £20 million for the new RISE teams over the next 15 months. Our first 20 advisors are already in place. They'll be working with schools across the country to drive improvement and share best practice, because where one school fails, we have all failed the children of that school. This new era of accountability will come with a new era of inspection. Single headline grades pushed our system on. They brought proper scrutiny to our schools, but the time for change has come. They had become high stakes for schools, but inadequate to drive the change our children need. Too blunt, too rough, too vague. Too many schools left without a proper diagnosis, not clear on how to improve. We need a more diagnostic approach, targeted and focused, raising the bar on what we expect from schools, the ingredients of a great education, each given their own grade, new report cards identifying excellence and shining a light on performance, clarity for parents, challenge backed by support for schools. Those diagnostics will drive our approach to improvement. The worst performing schools, whether local authority maintained or academies, will be moved to a strong trust. We will never flinch from bringing in new leadership when children's life chances demand it. But in this new era of accountability, we want schools supporting each other too. We'll foster a self-improving system where all seek to raise their standards, a proposed new top grade of exemplary to signal educational practice that's simply too good for schools to keep to themselves. Where a school's awarded exemplary in any area, what they're doing should be shared across the country so that others can learn from the very best. Our quest for high and rising standards is universal. We want good schools to become great and great schools to become even better, sharing their excellence along the way. Reformed accountability will underpin everything else we're doing in education, whether that's better SEND provision in mainstream schools or getting to the bottom of the attendance crisis. Inclusion and attendance will both be part of raising standards across our schools. The changes we are making to accountability will draw on the wisdom of the entire sector. Today, the Department and Ofsted launched 12-week consultations seeking the views of those who know the school system best, teachers, school leaders and parents, on the principles needed for inspection, support and intervention. Ofsted have already drawn on findings of their Big Listen initiative to inform their approach to future inspections, but further action is needed. Ofsted's consultation will seek the views of parents, carers, professionals and learners on how Ofsted conducts inspections and the way it reports them. It includes proposals for new inspection methodology alongside the proposed inspection framework, toolkits and report cards to change how inspections look and feel for schools. Consultation and parental involvement is essential. Neither government nor Ofsted can drive up standards for children alone. We have excellent schools and trusts across our country. They have come about thanks to the hard work of school leaders, teachers and others, and reforms passed in this House. They've raised standards Down the decades, the government believes the best way to celebrate success is indeed to multiply it. Because the government believes that where you're born, what family, what city, what income should not determine your access to the life-changing power of a good education. The measures for school accountability I've outlined today will support and challenge every school to do better for its pupils, share its successes and bring high and rising standards to every corner of the country, so that every child can go to a good local school and look forward to a bright future. And I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Secretary of State, Laura Trott.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm grateful to the Schools Minister for advance sight of her statement. I'd also like to echo her words. Our thoughts and prayers today are with the parents of the 15-year-old boy whose life was so tragically cut short, and the teachers and pupils at All Saints Catholic High School. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are promised today a better and faster approach to school improvement, but what we have in front of us is a proposed system which is slower and weaker. The Secretary of State repeatedly talked about a new era today. It is a new era, one of regression, confusion and poorly thought out policy. We've had this consistently with the Education Bill over the last few months. The Education Secretary said that the bill didn't cap pay. It did. They said that the bill wouldn't reduce school choice, yet their own impact assessment says that it does. And now we have a speech which says that the academisation is a key driver of rising standards, yet they are taking away the automatic academy order in this bill. Once again, with the Secretary of State, there is a gap between the reality and her rhetoric. The reality is weaker accountability, weaker standards and a slower response. The Minister, who I respect, has been sent out in the place of the Secretary of State, who is happy to give a speech to a think tank, but not to this House today.
Where is she?
To try to sell a nonsense that her proposal will mean faster school improvement, when her own document, released today, shows that an 18-month delay in turning around schools. Instead of immediate new management in a failing school, which is what happens at the moment, the Secretary of State is proposing to get a team of DfE bureaucrats coming in for 18 months, and only after they make no improvements will the Education Secretary consent to actually get a new team in place to lead the school. And what will this mean, Madam Deputy Speaker? More children in failing schools for longer. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, as the Minister says, we know what works to turn around failing schools. A good academy trust taking over a failing school is the best intervention that we can make to turn schools around. There is no evidence whatsoever that the approach proposed today, with a delay and a RISE team coming in, will be any better. Can the Minister confirm that she has no evidence that her approach to delaying the academy order will be better? Can she point to where her proposed approach has been trialled effectively? It is unconscionable to foist a new system into place which is not evidence and will make things worse, not better. And the loudest criticisms to end the automatic conversion of failing schools into academies isn't even coming from this side of the House. They're coming from the Children's Commissioner, the former Schools Commissioner, school leaders and even Labour MPs. The government's own backbenchers have said that, and I quote, making the process discretionary will result in a large increase in judicial reviews, pressure on councils and prolonged uncertainty, which is in nobody's interests. Madam Deputy Speaker, I agree. We have consistently seen that where the academy order is not mandatory, there are endless legal delays. Just last week, the Secretary of State revoked an academy order after the school threatened legal action. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is exactly what those who have raised concerns said would happen. It is utterly shameful. Can I ask the Minister, how many cohorts of children have to pass through a failing school before the Secretary of State will take action? How many children will they fail before they do something? Madam Deputy Speaker, academisation works. Even the government's own impact assessment of the bill admits that. But what is Labour's much anticipated grand alternative? New regional school improvement teams. And what is in the place of expert academy trusts with proven leadership taking over schools? The Minister today has talked about 20 advisors. Just to put this into context, the Harris Academy Trust alone currently have over 90 expert staff focused on school improvement. Does the Minister really think that 20 people is sufficient? How does this compare to the number of people in the department's communication team, for example? What is happening to all the schools due to receive structural intervention from the beginning of this year? Are we replacing new management with vague advice? All this is doing is creating a weaker system, uncertainty and delay, and it is children from the most deprived areas who will suffer the most. And on Ofsted, the government claims parents and teachers wanted clarity. So, in response, we've moved from 4 to 5 ratings, multiple different categories, one more for safeguarding, and no overall score. Madam Deputy Speaker, the new system being proposed today is complicated and it pleases nobody. The Association of School and College Leaders have said that the new grading system is bewildering. What is the Minister's response? Madam Deputy Speaker, another day, another chaotic reset attempt from this government. It's education vandalism, however they try to dress it up. The Children's Commissioner said last week that the schools bill would leave children spending longer in failing schools. Minister, she's right, isn't she?
Minister.
Thank you. Perhaps the Honourable Lady would recognise the legacy her government left behind. Schools crumbling, standards falling, a lose-lose-lose SEND system and a generation missing from England's schools. It's no wonder the Shadow Minister admitted they should hang their heads in shame over their record. In little over 100 days, this Labour government has moved education back to the centre of national life. Breakfast clubs in primaries, uniform cost savings for families, nurseries for families, schools being rebuilt across the country, better pay for teachers, school report cards, developing a broader, richer curriculum, and a child poverty task force to clean up the Tories' mess. Labour is delivering a new era for school standards, overhauling school inspection and accountability, driving high and rising standards for every child in every school. We'll create a one-stop shop for parents with a new digital school profiles, and we will challenge those stuck schools. 600 schools receiving consecutive poor Ofsted judgments. This is the new front in the fight against low expectations, and our RISE teams will spearhead the stronger, faster system prioritising these schools. On top of these measures, we have the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill that will improve standards by getting excellent qualified teachers in every classroom, teaching a cutting-edge curriculum, so parents know that their child will get a core, excellent offer. As part of our plan for change, we're giving every child the best start in life. That's the difference that a Labour government will make.
Chair of the Select Committee, Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for her statement, and can I associate myself with her remarks on the tragic incident in Sheffield. The consultations she's announced today are being launched in a context of considerable pressures in our education system, particularly related to the crisis in the SEND system, which has far-reaching consequences for every part of the sector, and serious problems with the recruitment and retention of teachers. The Education Select Committee has heard from stakeholders that accountability pressures can encourage exclusionary practices to maintain academic performance, while school leaders regularly raise concerns that the lack of resources to meet the needs of children with SEND makes it very hard for them to meet the needs of every child. How does the department plan to safeguard children with SEND to ensure that accountability pressures on schools do not lead to exclusionary practices, but instead promote inclusive approaches that support the needs of students with SEND?
Minister.
The Honourable Lady is absolutely right to focus on this, and improving the SEND system is clearly a focal point for delivering on our opportunity mission to break that link between background and opportunity. We've committed clearly to inclusive mainstream education. The Children's Wellbeing Bill will also include measures to give local authorities more levers on admissions, and Ofsted have made very clear that inclusion, not instead of high and rising standards, but as well as, will be a key feature of inspection. The Honourable Lady will know that we are also keeping this matter under review, and our reform plans are in progress, and we will announce further in relation to this in due course.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Munira Wilson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could I also start by associating myself with the Minister's comments about the tragic stabbing in Sheffield. Our thoughts and prayers are with the family of the boy who's been stabbed to death and his family and friends at this difficult time. Madam Deputy Speaker, ensuring that every child has the opportunity of an excellent education so that they can thrive is one of the most important jobs that government can do. School inspection and improvement have long needed reform, and we on these benches have been clear in our calls that the single word judgment needs to go in terms of Ofsted. Those judgments simply don't give parents the information they need to make a well-informed decision as to what's right for their child, and they've fostered an adversarial culture that was failing schools and teachers and in turn failing our children. But on its own, a move away from single word to multiple word judgments will do little to bring about change. We need to see a culture shift so that Ofsted, teachers, school leaders and parents are partners together in the process of school improvement and assessment, rather than adversaries. So is the Minister confident that these proposals will be able to achieve that culture shift so that the inspector is seen as a critical friend rather than someone to be feared? The Minister has spoken a lot in recent months about the importance of mainstream inclusivity in terms of tackling the SEND crisis. And while the report card will take into account inclusivity in the broad sense of the word, there's no dedicated assessment to be made of how a school's environment and provision caters to children and young people with SEND. And given how many thousands are missing out on the support they need and the importance of this issue to schools, shouldn't that element be assessed on its own merits? Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am utterly incredulous that we are getting these announcements today when we are halfway through the committee stage of the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, which makes a significant change in relation to the school improvement regime. It cannot be right that this House is being asked to legislate a new approach to school improvement, namely repeal of the duty to make an academy order for failing schools, without knowing what the outcome of these consultations from Ofsted and government will be. The cart seems to have been put before the horse. School accountability and improvement is too important for changes to be made in this vacuum. I honestly expected better from this government, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's disappointing that parliamentary scrutiny...
The Honourable Lady will know that she has well exceeded the 2 minutes allotted for a statement. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Following the end of headline Ofsted judgments in September, Ofsted undertook the big listen, listened very carefully to the feedback on the way it conducts inspections, whilst also reviewing the format for reporting on those inspections. So the Honourable Lady's comments are noted and have been designed into the new system. Indeed, that work is what has paved the way for the rollout of the school report cards, which, subject to consultation, will be rolled out in September 2025. But obviously, we are very open both to our consultation, and Ofsted is very well open to the views of the profession on its consultation proposals. But indeed, alongside a reformed Ofsted, we are creating the RISE teams, who will be leaders with a proven track record of improving school standards, and they will draw on bespoke improvement plans for stuck schools, and with significant investment that the previous government compared to £6,000 that they made available for schools that were stuck, we'll be looking more like £100,000 available per school to really drive that improvement. The Honourable Lady's comments in relation to SEND are well made, and indeed that is something that Ofsted will be judging, as I said to the Chair of the Select Committee, looking at inclusion specifically, as well as not instead of high and rising standards and attainment in schools. But the reformed accountability and improvement systems very much build on the work of the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, because in that we are legislating to require teachers to have or work towards qualified teacher status, ensuring all schools teach a cutting-edge national curriculum, following the curriculum and assessment review, and restoring teaching as an attractive profession through a floor but no ceiling on pay and conditions. As a combination, all of these reforms are going to drive high and rising standards and break down those barriers to opportunity for every child.
Hear, hear. Rachael Maskell.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I appreciate all the work that my honourable friend is doing, but the lack of transparency within the governance structures of multi-academy trusts, not least to the local community, means that executive boards in some areas are choosing who their members and trustees are, and as a result are not putting in the rigour of accountability to those MATs. Will she ensure that there will be mechanisms available to have far more robust scrutiny of multi-academy trusts and the option to return those schools into the local authority?
Minister.
Ofsted, as part of its proposed reforms, will be looking at the leadership of schools, and indeed that includes the governance, because good leadership is clearly the route map to success for children within those schools. And indeed we are legislating for local authorities to have for all schools to have that duty to cooperate with local authorities on place planning, on admissions, to make sure that we have a whole school system that works together. And obviously we are encouraging collaboration between those outstanding and excellent exemplary schools, trusts in particular, that can share their expertise across the board, encouraging a collaborative school system and a system that serves the community, and where possible ensure that every child has access to a good local school within their community.
Father of the House, Sir Edward Leigh.
In my experience, parents have a pretty good instinct to what is a good school, and the great generator of progress has been the academy programme, and head teachers responding to what parents want, and we should be giving them more, not less freedom. Isn't there a danger in all this that if you create highly complex Ofsted reports across giving league tables across 40 different areas, that you will replace head teachers concentrating on what parents want with a kind of tick box culture, appeasing the man in Whitehall? Just endless auditing is not the solution. It's delivering what parents want.
So, first of all, I find the notion that parents won't be able to understand more information about their child's school a bit insulting to parents who care deeply about their children and their education. And parents tell us they want more information, not less. A one-word judgment doesn't adequately sum up a school. And the Ofsted proposal is to report on 9 different areas, all of which are the key ingredients to a child's education, and enable some schools, that may perform in an exemplary or very strong way on some measures, to be given due credit where they should, where they're tackling attendance, where they're tackling behaviour issues, so that they can share that best practice. This will be a self-improving system, and we will recognise good practice, but we will target laser-focused on areas that need to improve.
Alistair Strathern.
In spite of the broken state of SEND provision in my constituency and across the country, I have the real privilege of getting to meet with some schools who are going above and beyond to support pupils with additional needs. However, whether it's in their approach to admissions, provision or exclusions, it's clear not all schools are being held to these same standards. So as well as this government's welcome investment and reforms around SEND, how will our changes to accountability ensure that every school is held to the highest possible standards when it comes to inclusion?
The Honourable Gentleman is absolutely right to highlight inclusion, and that is one of the great opportunities that is presented here by the report card system, that will look at a whole range of practice across a school, and it will include inclusion as part of those proposals, because we need to see a more inclusive mainstream system. We need to see better cooperation and collaboration on a local level to make sure that every child, regardless of their special educational need or disability, has access to an excellent education that will set them up to thrive.
Damien Hines.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. There seem to be a lot of narrative resets around in government at the moment, but I must say I, for one, was thrilled, refreshed, to hear the Honourable Lady speaking about school standards with pride. I was thrilled to hear her speaking about the role of Year 6 assessments, of phonics, of multi-academy trusts in driving improvement. It's perhaps a good thing that dispatch box doesn't have wing mirrors, because not all of her colleagues looked quite as excited as I was. But I say to her, I admire her bravery. But with words must come deeds if she is serious about this. And one thing she could do is excise from the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill large parts in Part 2 which undermine the very freedoms and flexibilities for academies and academy trusts which have enabled these improvements to take place. Will she do it?
Our Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill is a whole package of measures that not only delivers landmark reforms to child safeguarding, but also will unleash the ability of all schools to collaborate, to work together, to operate under this new accountability system, to really drive higher rising standards, to make sure every child has the offer of a national curriculum, a qualified teacher in every classroom, and high and rising standards in every school in England.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for her statement today, particularly considering the awful news that she had to convey to this House. As a former teacher, I saw firsthand the damage that high-stakes, single-word judgments, Ofsted judgments, had on teachers and head teachers, not just in my constituency of Harlow, but across Essex. And let me welcome the focus this government has on raising standards in our schools. But would she recognise, under the previous government, there was far too much focus on stick rather than carrot when it came to supporting teachers, and actually any change to the Ofsted framework needs to support our hard-working teachers whose mental health and wellbeing at the moment is rock bottom.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and also commend him for his experience in the classroom, which is clearly valuable, and we always want to encourage more teachers. And indeed, the whole reasoning behind these reforms is to create an accountability system that recognises good practice, that identifies where improvements can be made, but also diagnoses how that improvement can be made, and ensures that there is the ability to create a self-improving system amongst our schools so that they can support one another to drive forward those improvements in the interests of everybody. It's not about punishing schools, it's about supporting schools to create those improvements that we know they want to see and we want to see for children.
Caroline Bowden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Head teachers in my constituency of South Devon have expressed some disappointment today at the reform in the Ofsted regime, which they said offered the opportunity for fundamental reform, but they don't see that. For example, there are no details on how inclusion will be measured, which we know is absolutely crucial for addressing the SEND crisis. As this is such a key part of the new inspection process, can the Minister assure the House that details of how inclusion will be measured will be made available while there is still time for meaningful consultation?
The Honourable Lady raises an important point, and absolutely we want to hear from schools about how issues like inclusion can be successfully measured and incentivised and held accountable as part of this system. Ofsted, along with the documents that it has produced today, has also produced toolkits that set out its inspection framework, and I would urge the Honourable Lady and the representations from her constituency to take a look. And obviously, if there are additional issues that are outstanding, then of course she should get in touch.
Helen Dollymore.
I thank the Minister for her statement and her commitment to driving up standards in all of our schools. And I have to say, having sat and listened to the benches opposite, who seem to think that multi-academy trusts are a panacea to everything, I would gently invite them to take a look at the experience of my constituents in Hastings and Rye, where we've been spectacularly failed by some particularly bad academy chains. There is no place that this rise in school standards is more urgent than my constituency, where over half of young people leave school without the equivalent of a C in maths and English GCSE. We have 3 out of 3 secondary schools in Hastings are currently rated requires improvement, and at one of them, Arc Alexandra, 123 children left last term because they don't feel that school is meeting their needs. So will she urgently meet me to discuss these issues and discuss how we drive up school standards in Hastings and Rye?
I would happily meet with the Honourable Lady. I know she is very committed to securing better outcomes for the schools and the children in her area. The reason we are making these reforms is so that we can go further to make improvement better and faster. We want to add to the tools in our box to help schools improve. We're not taking anything away, we're only adding to the ability to ensure we get the change within our school system that far too many children desperately need.
Caroline Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. How many structural interventions does the Minister expect the schools to get each year? Not rise interventions, but structural interventions.
Minister.
We expect the range of structural interventions to continue as they are currently over the at least for the next 12 months, because we will continue to intervene where schools are causing concern and mandate structural change. We'll also continue to mandate it where there requires significant improvement in schools. What you will see a doubling of is the number of schools that need significant improvement being improved through the RISE system. So we're not reducing the number of interventions that the previous government undertook. We are doubling the number of schools being helped and supported to improve.
Sean Davis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the statement from my honourable friend. In Telford, there are 5 stuck schools, and the rise of investment from £6,000 to potentially £100,000 per stuck school means that up to £470,000 of extra investment is coming the way of Telford schools. But I know, Madam Deputy Speaker, from speaking to my wife, who's a primary school teacher in Telford, that it isn't just about money, but it's also about the peer support, the tapping into excellence and expertise. Can she assure me that the money, which is game-changing, also is accompanied by that extra support?
Yeah. The honourable gentleman has very correctly identified that we see the future of school improvement as very much driven by a whole school self-improving system where schools will support one another to drive that improvement. We are putting the extra money in place. We really want to be laser focused on those stuck schools, those 600 schools that have been stuck on far too low a rating for far too long, to make sure that those over 300,000 children are supported as quickly as possible with improved outcomes. But indeed it will very much, as the honourable gentleman says, be supported with that peer support that is so important, that we tap in to that knowledge and expertise from trusts that we know are doing an excellent job.
Joshua Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've spoken to a number of head teachers in Maidenhead today who've told me that what's being proposed by Ofsted is incredibly overcomplicated, where exceptional seems out of reach, which will be a blunt tool that will not allow schools' individual identities to be taken into account. And they still do not believe that anybody can accurately judge a school's strengths and areas for improvements within 2 days. So what does the Minister have to say to these head teachers, and will she meet with me at Maidenhead heads to discuss?
So I would encourage the teachers that he refers to, the head teachers that he refers to feed back to Ofsted as part of their consultation process. Obviously, it is Ofsted's consultation process. They determine the mechanisms by which they will undertake these the new inspection, and they set the framework for that. Obviously, as the Department for Education, we're responsible for implementing the findings of an Ofsted inspection, but we're obviously very interested to make sure that it does achieve what we want it to achieve, which is to drive high and rising standards. We are confident it will do so. The Department for Education also has its consultation document out on how we see these reforms working in practice. So if the honourable gentleman would like to meet and discuss those, I'd be happy to do so.
Alice MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome what my right honourable friend has said today. I recently visited Marcross Primary School in Norwich, which is a shining beacon of what a local school can provide to its residents. Would she join me in paying tribute to the staff and pupils at Marcross? But also, she touched on it in her statement, but how practically can we ensure that the lessons in good practice are shared from primary schools like Marcross, not just across the county, but across the country?
The Honourable Lady is absolutely right to celebrate the good work that's being done by schools in her local area. We recognise that there are many schools, both in the trust sector and in the maintained sector, that are working tirelessly day in, day out to deliver excellent outcomes for the children in their schools. Report cards will clearly identify what needs to improve, which is really important that they do so, but will also encourage schools to work together and really identify those exemplary practices that should be spread more widely. And the Honourable Lady is absolutely right to highlight the many examples in her area and look forward to them working across the system to drive improvement across the board.
Dr. Andrew Murison.
Speaker, how will the selection of colour-coded performance areas on the report card be determined by the views and needs of parents as much as ministers and the education establishment? And how do the exceptional schools that she has described differ from the beacon schools that the then Labour government created in 1998 and abolished in 2004?
So the determination of the report cards are within Ofsted's remit. They've launched their consultation. The Honourable Gentleman is certainly invited to contribute to the consultation and indeed encourage anyone within his local area to do so also. It's very open to feedback. In terms of the retro question, we're very much looking forward as to how this can support the Department for Education in its work to target reform where we know it's needed. Our system currently is not working well. We know it needs to change. That's why we've introduced the Children's and Wellbeing in Schools Bill. It's why we are designing a school system that supports and challenges every school to deliver for every child. And between our reforms and those that Ofsted are consulting on, we welcome and are open to feedback, but we're confident that together we can deliver those high rising standards for every child.
Gurinder Josan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the statement from the Minister and refer the House to my entry in the Register of Members' Interest. In my various roles in voluntary governance, which I must say, as Chair of a Voluntary Academy Trust and in maintained schools and previously in pupil referral unit in the Faith School, Free School, quite comprehensive. And I would just comment that the argument or the discussion about pushing schools into one direction or the other, whether that be wholly maintained or wholly academised, is a bogus argument. I'm sure and I congratulate the Minister on focusing on the provisions of the statement about accountability and about improvement and not getting diverted into those. As part of my voluntary governance roles, I've participated in many Ofsted inspections over the years, and I can attest to the hard work of all staff across all of our schools and academies across in that, but also to the stress that very often accompanies that for our schools.
The Honourable Member is going to have to perfect making a short question to the Minister. Perhaps another sentence will do.
Would the Minister agree that the new school report cards will need to balance the important additional information needed by parents with the requirement for school improvement, plus the need to balance the protect staff well-being, and will she ensure that she listens to parents and the whole education sector to maintain?
I thank the Honourable Gentleman for his question and for his service, which is hugely important. We often do not recognise enough the work that governors undertake, the very important role that they play within our school system, and we thank all school governors for their service and encourage more people to sign up. Just in response to the Honourable Gentleman's initial comment, it may be interesting for him to know that between January 2022 and December 2024, 40% of schools in a category of concern took over a year to convert into sponsored academies. That's too long. We need to intervene more quickly, which is why we are going to use this opportunity of a more diagnostic Ofsted report card to identify where improvements need to happen so that we can get in there with RISE teams much early, as soon as a school may have failed its inspection, and no longer focus solely on structural intervention, as he says, but focus on school improvement, however that can best be undertaken.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. One of the most common areas of casework in Mid-Dorset North Paul is children with special needs. And parents are often citing awful experiences of children being manipulated out of school by making them truly hostile places and by failures often at a trust level to provide even very low or no cost changes, with parents completely ignored in the process. So I'm interested to understand why the Minister has not included within this the introduction of full accountability and judgments at the multi-academy trust level, because parents simply have nowhere to go when they need to complain and the problem is at a trust space.
The Honourable Lady is right to highlight this issue. It sounds very concerning what she says. We are looking at multi-academy trust level accountability. We're also looking at how parents can engage in that relationship with schools to ensure that those proper lines of accountability are available, and I'll continue to keep that under review and we'll report in due course.
Joe Morris.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And like the Minister, I'm also the product of a state school in the North East, and I'm tremendously proud of that fact. Many teachers in Throckley, in Hexham, Ponteland, Prado and elsewhere told me on the doorstep during the election they felt that one-word judgment did not allow the sufficient room for subtlety and for nuance in evaluation of schools, and parents felt the same. Can the Minister assure me this is simply the first step in delivering the high and rising standards that we all need and expect for children across the country?
The Honourable Gentleman speaks to my heart as he references areas of his constituency that I formerly represented for 14 years, from 2010 in this place, and he is absolutely right that he went to an absolutely excellent school in the neighbouring constituency also, and that this really is the first step on this journey of improving our schools and making sure that every child has the best start in life and the best education possible.
Sammy Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's quite right that we measure the performance of schools, since we spend billions of pounds every year and they affect the life chances of millions of children across the country. But can the Minister explain why, at a time when she's jettisoning the academy system, which has been designed to improve standards and disseminate changes that can be made to improve schools, she's doing that at the same time as wanting to introduce these new measures to improve the standards in schools. But could you tell us, for the individual schools, what are the implications for the schools in gathering the data, holding the data, and then presenting the data, which will be required to give the information for these 9 sections and the 5 different levels? And how is she going to make all of that comprehensible to parents?
Minister.
So I'll go in reverse order of those 3 questions. The first one, I think parents are perfectly understanding and perfectly capable of understanding a more complex report card than one word. I disagree with the Honourable Gentleman's characterisation of these changes. We are very much about harnessing all the great things that academies have achieved and the great reforms, improvements, innovations that academies have pioneered, and we want to spread that right across our school system. And the purpose of the report cards is to shine a light on all that great practice so that it can be spread more widely, but also shine a very sharp spotlight on where improvement needs to happen to deliver that as quickly as possible. As far as how Ofsted will deliver on this, that is a matter for Ofsted, and if he wishes to respond to their consultation, I'm sure they'd welcome his views.
Yuan Yang.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for her remarks, in particular for the funding for regional improvement teams in schools. 2 weeks ago, my constituents in Shinfield and Whitley received the devastating news that their local secondary school, Oakbank, had received its worst ever Ofsted report in its time. And parents and former staff at that school have asked me how Anthem Schools Trust, which has failed schools not just in my constituency of Early and Woodley, but several others in recent years, can be held to account. So I asked the Minister to set out how can the new accountability framework make sure that we have safeguards against failing multi-academy trusts.
Minister.
I share the Honourable Lady's concerns. I don't know the details of the specific school, but I can say that a school judged by Ofsted to require special measures will still receive structural intervention. If it's a maintained school, it will become an academy. If it's an existing academy, which I believe she is describing, it will be transferred to a new and stronger trust. And in the shorter term, whilst the RISE teams are focusing on stuck schools and building their capacity, a school required significant improvement will also by default continue to receive structural intervention. But from September 26, we propose where a school is in that category, it will receive mandatory targeted intervention from RISE. So schools will be supported at a much quicker stage without having to wait for structural intervention to really drive those improved outcomes for the children in their school.
Monica Harding.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My teachers in Esher and Walton have greeted today's announcement with a degree of cynicism, which you might expect after feeling that they've been ignored for the last 10 years. One wrote to me saying, same system, different name. Another, same old thing, just different words. So would the Minister reassure them that this is not just business as usual, and might she expand on the levels of collaboration she talked of?
Minister.
I would absolutely encourage the teachers that she references to feed into the consultation, but would seek to allay concerns that whilst this will be Ofsted as consultation on how it conducts its consultations and how it reports on its inspections, as a department, we are very focused on creating a self-improving system of collaboration and using the new report cards to be able to identify where exemplary practice exists and share that more widely, but also identify where that support is required and encourage schools to work in a collaborative way in order to deliver that support with the support of RISE teams to bolster that targeted approach, particularly to stuck schools that we know have been ignored for far too long. I hope that the teachers that she references will feel more confident about the system, but encourage them to respond to the consultation nonetheless.
Andrew Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The laser focus on stuck schools will be incredibly important for the life chances of children who've been failed for too long. And I'm really pleased to see the government putting its money where its mouth is with the up to £100,000 for each school. Ofsted's research makes the point that in some unstuck schools, the MAT's role in raising expectations and developing curriculum subject expertise has been critical. But in others that have remained stuck, the MAT had not been effective and was not providing the right quality support. So can she say more about how RISE teams will be able to work with MATs to improve the support they offer?
Minister. Children only get one childhood, and so it matters deeply to them that they go to a great school whilst they are still children, which is why we are determined to deliver faster improvement to schools that need it. Academisation, whilst it has been successful in many places, can be a slow process, and not all schools can be matched up with strong trusts, and that's why we will utilise the RISE teams to support schools to work together to drive improvement and create that whole system reform that we know children need to see.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for her answers? I very much welcome the Minister's decision to uplift accountability and transparency within the schooling sector. However, perhaps the Minister could and will give a greater understanding of what help and support will be offered to those schools that are struggling to ensure that this accountability also brings improvements which are undoubtedly and clearly essential. And further to my honourable friends, the member for East Antrim's question to do with the academy sector education, has the Minister had any discussions with the equivalent in Northern Ireland in relation to the impact from here upon the academy sector back home? Thank you so much.
I thank the honourable gentleman and his welcoming of the statement that we've made today. We are very much strengthening the tools that we can use for faster and more effective school improvement with the introduction of the new RISE teams and also, as he points out, the greater transparency and diagnostic approach of Ofsted reports to be able to identify where that great practice is, but also identify where there is room for improvement. I will take away his question about the impact on other parts of the UK.
Alex McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Parents of SEND children in Gloucester will welcome today's statement and the words from my right honourable friend about SEND and inclusion in our schools. Will the Minister confirm that the measures set out by this Labour government will drive up standards for all children in Gloucester? And will she agree to meet with me and parents in my city who have for years battled the broken system left behind by the previous Conservative government?
I can absolutely give the honourable gentleman that reassurance. Not only do we wish to see a change in the drive towards inclusive mainstream as part of this new Ofsted accountability system, but obviously the changes in the Children's Wellbeing Bill will support these endeavours, and the Curriculum and Assessment Review also will look at how barriers to inclusion can be removed in the curriculum and assessment system, and how we can get high standards and expectations of great progress for all.
It's working. We're into just.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I first of all please associate myself with the earlier comments made by the Minister about the tragic events in Sheffield, another young life lost tragically due to knife crime. Does the Minister agree that the landmark reforms being made will not only drive high and rising standards, but will also help in the recruitment and retention of teachers? And can she please confirm that we will be engaging fully with parents and teachers when it comes to developing plans for the school report cards?
Yes, I can absolutely agree with the Honourable Gentleman. High quality teaching is the most important in-school factor for improving outcomes for children. We absolutely need to drive recruitment, but our greatest tool for recruitment is indeed retention and holding on to the fantastic teachers that are in our schools. A more holistic and broader picture of a school will shine a light on the great practice going on in schools, the hard work, the context that schools operate in, and will indeed deliver on that desire that I know every teacher has to deliver high and rising standards for the children in their care.
Sarah Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I've worked closely with schools in some of the most disadvantaged parts of our country, and I've seen Academy Trust after Academy Trust after Academy Trust fail to turn around the schools in some of the most challenging circumstances, leaving behind some of our most disadvantaged learners. I welcome particularly the commitment today that the turnaround will be supported by cash, £100,000 as compared to £6,000 that was previously provided. And doesn't this show the difference in the importance that Labour places on turning around failing schools compared to the Tories?
Minister.
I think the Honourable Lady put it very well. We absolutely need to be laser focused on those schools that have been consistently underperforming but have not received the support, help or intervention that they need in order to succeed. We will be laser focused on supporting those schools to achieve the outcomes that we know they want to achieve for their children, but they just need the support to do so.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome this government's commitment to overhauling Ofsted, particularly in terms of making sure SEND is at the heart of every school, because a truly outstanding school is one that has inclusivity in the heart of everything it does. Can the Minister commit to listening to the parents and carers of SEND kids through the consultation to make sure that they are at the heart of the reforms that this government is delivering?
The Honourable Gentleman advocates very powerfully for the families in his area that have been struggling with the SEND system that clearly is in need of reform. The changes that Ofsted are proposing, the changes that as the Department for Education we are proposing, are all designed to create a more inclusive and effective school system for all children, including those with special educational needs and disabilities. And indeed, we will continue to listen to their voices as we plan our reforms.
Josh Dean.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I want to thank my honourable friend for her statement this afternoon. I recently met with head teachers in my community who detailed the challenges they face of SEND, recruitment and retention, and persistent absence in schools. Would the Minister set out how this government's reforms will start to remedy these issues, break down the barriers to opportunity for children and young people in my constituency of Hertford and Stortford, and does she agree with me that these reforms are an important step on fixing the damage inflicted on our education system by the party opposite over the last 14 years?
I absolutely recognise the challenges that the Honourable Gentleman sets out. There are many schools right across the system, whether local authority maintained or academies, who are facing similar challenges. This report card system will be a really important reflection of a whole school's experience and will laser focus in on areas such as attendance, such as inclusion, in order to create those toolkits for schools to be able to follow to ensure that they know the standards that they need to reach, but also so that schools can work collaboratively to support one another to achieve those outcomes for children. We're not in the game of punishing schools, we're in the game of supporting them to bring about the change that we know they want to see.
Sam Rushworth.
Thank you. I've visited more than a dozen schools in my constituency since I was elected, and I'm always overwhelmed by the passion of the teachers who have to work in really trying circumstances where they're often very under-resourced to deal with children that come to school that are ill-prepared for school and a growing caseload of children with special educational needs. So I really welcome the additional investment with the RISE teams. But the Minister will know that the members opposite are fond of quoting our improvement in PISA rankings, which is a legacy of a generation that experienced Sure Start. And the Minister will know that that generation, where children had a Sure Start centre close to them, they achieved 0.8 grades higher at GCSE. So what will the government do to ensure that we have more children coming to school that are prepared for school?
The honourable gentleman has very much diagnosed the challenge. We have a persistently and stubbornly high disadvantage gap between those children that we know are leaving primary school without the fundamentals of reading, writing and maths, and that goes on to impact their outcomes in secondary school. But we know that starts at the very earliest stage, which is why we are investing in the early years. We're investing in speech and language therapy. We're investing in nursery provision because we are absolutely determined to improve the early learning development goal outcomes for children and give every child the best start in life.
Annalise Midgley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Minister's statement, but in my constituency of Knowsley, GCSE results are among the lowest in the country, and a quarter of pupils are classed as persistently absent. So what message does the Minister have for children, parents, teachers about plans to drive high and rising standards to provide more and better opportunities in my constituency?
Minister. The Honourable Lady is a powerful advocate for the children in her area and is absolutely right to champion better outcomes. We know that that journey to not achieving the grades that children should starts at the earliest stage, which is why, as I said, we are investing in the early years. But indeed, these Ofsted report cards will shine a light on those issues of attendance at school. We know children can't get a great education if they're not in school to get it. It has to be a priority for schools, but we recognise the challenges, so we want to support schools to be able to achieve better attendance figures, and we'll do so by diagnosing the challenges and putting in place the self-supporting school system that can really drive those better outcomes.
Luke Charters.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Harris Foundation have just revealed that their chief executive's pay is in excess of £500,000 a year. Does my honourable friend agree with me that we need much greater transparency and accountability when it comes to the excessive pay of some multi-academy trust leaders?
The honourable gentleman raises an important point, and it's one that I will take away and look at.
David Baines.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In St Helens North, most schools suffered real terms funding cuts and child poverty increased by more than 50% under the previous government. Reform of the inspection system is needed and is welcome, but would the Minister agree with me that key to children doing well and good outcomes being measured is investment and support for families from pre-birth onwards, as well as fair funding for all our schools?
The The Honourable Gentleman is absolutely right. Again, he not only diagnoses the problem but has recommended the solution, and which is why we have established a Child Poverty Task Force chaired by the Secretary of State for Education, along with the Secretary of State for Department for Work and Pensions, to look really fundamentally at the levers that we have in government to support children to no longer grow up in poverty, which we know is affecting their outcomes both in their education and in life.
Can I thank the Minister for her statement?